So, if you guys don't know me, my name is Raul Deju, just to not be confused with other Rauls in the club. What we're going to talk about today is no bugs sours. So, there's always been a way to do a no bug sour, but now there's some new ways using some interesting yeasts that have been bioengineered or found in the wild or bred around. There's a lot of different things. So let's start off with that. Next slide. This is a picture of Lactobacillus plantarum. And then I just remembered I got the remote here. Sorry, guys. Next slide. I'm used to night. Next slide here. So, there's a lot of sours. We had one of the best sours I've ever had here. Andy, that pesh was beautiful. The aroma of the peach came through really nice. Nice acidity, very complex. That's a traditional sour ale, right? I mean, it's hard to beat those. It's very hard to beat those and make those quick. Time is what makes it such a great sour for the most part. So, we have a lot of those old school sours that we all know, the lambics, the gozas, the guez, or I'm probably mispronouncing it. Some of the new stuff you see those pastry sours, imperial sours from Alvarado, kettle sours from Wild Barrel, all kinds of cool stuff. They're all good. Some people don't like them. Some people love them. Whatever, that's the beauty of beer. There's a lot of different styles. You pick what you want. Here, we're going to really focus on trying to see the next generation. We all have had these, but what's coming up? So traditional methods of sour, bugs over time. The lambic that this, SDL, Society de Lambic makes, that takes time. A lot of love. And Solera styles, I don't know how old that freaking inoculation you have going on is, like decades old. So, it's hard to recreate that, right? And in Belgium, they're going to have these things that are maybe a century old. I don't know, but definitely multiple decades. But the goal is layers of complex bacteria that you're going to put in there. You're going to let it go over time, and these bugs are going to work out. They're going to create different types of esters, different types of acids, all kinds of very complex compounds that are going to give you these beautiful layers of flavor. And then if you don't like the base, or if you like it, you want to enhance it, you can fruit it later on. You can take it out of those vessels. You can ferment in barrels. You can ferment in stainless and glass. All kinds of different ways of doing it. We've been doing that a lot. But as we all know, before the sour craze, there was certain breweries that would do sours and certain breweries that wouldn't. We'd all go to Lost Abbey to get our sours where they had a special room with all the good stuff. And then people wanted more and more sours. Like, well, I don't know if I want to make that. Home brewers, some home brewers make sours. They come over to the shop and they're like, you know what? I need another fermenter because I made a sour in this one, on purpose or not. And so they want a clean fermenter. They want a sour fermenter. There's folks here I know that use pin lock cornies just for their sours and the ball locks for their regular beer. So they can constantly keep two brew houses. So there's a lot of pain to do it, but there's also a lot of love, right? So what are the other methods of souring that is not your traditional bugs over time souring, which is, by the way, it's my preferred sour. I'm not saying that new methods of sour, kettle sours, should take over a traditional sour. It's just like sometimes you want a sour for the summer, and you are not going to wait a year to make it, right? You're like, let's get something quick. So quick souring methods, the ones that most breweries use, most home brewers, could be like sour mashing or kettle souring. Most people prefer kettle souring. I don't know too many people doing sour mashing, but it's also a way to do it. And then you have what some people call cheating, which is the adding some lactic acid. Now, I know maybe 12 years ago, I go to AleSmith or something, and Peter would put lactic acid in some of his beers, and he would note it. He would say, like, this one added lactic acid to give it a certain sourness. So there are people that do that. It's not bad. We'll talk about those things. So what is sour mashing, right? Sour mashing and kettle souring are pretty much first cousins. The only difference is that with the sour mashing, as you see, you're basically going to do it. It's all done hot side, so that's a good thing. You are using bugs, so it's not a no bug method. You're going to do some sort of lacto. You're either going to add some Good Belly or a lactoplantarum or a mix from your favorite yeast provider. Or in the case of the beer that we're going to taste today, you're going to add unmilled Pilsen. And they add it in a 1 pound per barrel method. And then you let it sit for like 2-3 days. And then you lauter it out like you would normally, sparge, everything. And then you're going to boil. And when you boil it, you kill those bugs. So at that point, you have no more bugs in your brew house, right? That's the whole idea. So you treat it like a traditional beer after that. There's still long strain sugars. Hopefully, you're going to go ahead and ferment that, and the sugars are going to turn into alcohol. You're going to have this low pH sour. It's going to be very refreshing, hopefully. You can get multiple layers of acidity because you're using bugs, because you could use a mix. You can use plantarum. You can use different ones. So, and then ferment it with your favorite sack yeast. Kettle sour. And this is where we need to start passing around that beer. So I was lucky enough to go to one of my friends over at Culver, and they use the kettle sour method. And there's a lot of really good things of why he likes kettle souring. It works for him. He worked in Germany, and this is where he learned to do it that way. And, if you're doing a 10-barrel batch, 10 pounds of unmilled Pilsen is going to run you a good, $10. And you can't buy freaking 2 things of Good Belly for $10. So it's like the cheapest. If you're the cheap brewer, this is your method. Cheap brewer method. $10 gets you 10 barrels of sour. So it definitely works out really well. I want you guys to, when you're drinking this one, appreciate the lightness of it. It is a traditional 50-50 wheat. I think he does 2-row. I'm going to say 2-row, but I know it's 50-50 wheat at least. So you definitely get that wheat characteristic of it. So check that out, and like I said, what is the key to some of these sours? I wasn't really here to tell you exactly how to do it, but the main key, go ahead.
Maybe I missed it, but what's the main difference between the boil souring and the kettle souring?
No, so a sour mash and a kettle sour, the difference is in one, you're going to inoculate the mash and then purge it and make sure there's no anaerobic, you need to keep it anaerobic. There's no aerobic stuff going on. And you seal that sucker, the mash, and then you let that sit, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, so you get to your pH. In this one, you basically, they recommend that you boil it like 20, 30 minutes so you kill all the bacteria you can't control, which you don't get in a sour mash. So in a sour mash, you have more chance of getting something that could have climbed in there. Whereas but some people like it. Sometimes they feel like it's more wild and it could go more sour. And also you have to understand, you have to keep it at 110. So not everybody has, so most people might have like a benign, mash tun. So if you have a benign mash tun, you can't keep it at 110. But if you have a steam jacketed mash tun, you're like, oh, whatever. You can do whatever. It really, the better way to make a cleaner sour is to do a kettle sour where you're going to put that bag in the wort. Go ahead.
So are you saying it's more dictated by the equipment that you have and what you can do with it versus what you are trying to do?
If you want it, like if you were a commercial brewer and you want to recreate, you probably go kettle sour because you're going to get to boil it for 30 minutes. And that's going to make sure that you have a clean slate to start with. So that means if you pitch Good Belly or your Alvarado Street and you pitch, they use like this Sky Free inoculation from it's an Icelandic yogurt lacto they use, or something else, your bugs are the ones that are going to go. So you want to keep that consistent, you're going to do a kettle sour. But yes, it is dictated by that. I mean, in tag time, right? You know, if you got to do 36 hours, you're probably going to brew on a Saturday, seal it all up, come in on Monday, boom, and start boiling, and then do your kettle sour that way. So yeah, you know, good question. But it's a 3-day thing. Usually, if you want to get, this is a 3-day to get to this pH, and he usually only goes to like 3-4, and then he fruits it, or I don't think he goes less than, he like 3-4, 3-3. So it's not super sour, even though it's nice and refreshing. So, yes. I mean, if you have a good CIP process, not really. Lactobacillus is not, I mean, we're not talking like PDO and Brett that have other type of survivability. But lacto, you know, you're keeping it on the hot side. You're going to blast it up. There's lacto everywhere. You know, there's lacto, like I said, in the Pilsen in your brew house. So, no, it's not, you know, with hops and everything. I didn't even talk about that, you know, you're trying to make a beer with low hops. When you do this, you want low hops. Once you boil it, you treat it like a regular beer. When you're souring it, depending on your culture, you know, we'll go into that. So yeah, the idea though, like you said, is hot side, and you know, you're going to boil it off and kill that bacteria, and you're ready to go. So you got a low pH wort at that point. So Purple Church, one more thing, he just puts in, I think he puts in some sort of blackberry puree, and that's what he uses for fruiting. So it's fruited in the bright tank with the blackberry puree, boom, mixed up, carbonated, and there you go. Now, here's the original no bugs method that add lactic acid. And sometimes some people are gonna like poo-poo it. It's like, oh, what the hell? But I'm telling you, I've had some stuff that people have made with some trickery, and sometimes you can't tell. If it's done right with the right acidity and the right fruits, and fruits that are slightly acidic, you can confuse them. But what I would say is that lactic acid is your friend, because you might have made a kettle sour and you only got it down to like 3.5. And you're like, you know, it needs a little oomph. Then you use a little bit of lactic acid to do that. So it's good as a correction tool. I highly recommend that. So I wouldn't say make it this way, but if you need to sour something you need as a correction tool, you need another layer of complexity of something you already made, it's a really good tool to use lactic acid carefully, because, you know, a little goes a long way with lactic. So, question? That is.
Would you ever use other acids like they use in wine, malic acid or
so
citric?
in sours, and my sours I wouldn't, but in other beverages like seltzers, where you're trying to do complementary acids that are naturally occurring in some of the fruits, I would use like a malic, a citric, you know, and stuff. In sours, because I'm thinking more traditional. Like, I like the flavors of traditional sours, but if you were to do some of these crazy sours where you add in a bunch of fruit, and that fruit doesn't have the right balance, you could use an acid to bring out that fruit flavor more. Like in a cherry, certain cherries have malic acid, and the cherries you bought didn't really have that. If you bring that in, it will bring that fruit flavor out more. So that's actually a really good question. But it's more like on a correction. I wouldn't call it for the sours. I would be more like thinking of balancing my fruit product that way. But sours, usually it's about building lactic acid. And there's certain compounds and esters that come together with that lactic acid that's built. In traditional sours, because you have PDO and you have Brett, it gets more complicated, because now you have, sometimes people want a little acetobacter, but not too much. So there's other things developed, and the horse blanket from the Brett, you know, but we're not going into that because we're just trying to stay on this lactose side really here. You know, it's hard. You could do a whole class on traditional sours and keep going. let's just do Cantillon, like one little area. So, but here we're talking next gen sours. So now we're going to get into the next gen sour methods. And this is really what we're trying to focus on here. What has come up in the last, I don't know, I'm going to say 6 years, 5 years, not really on the homebrew scene. The homebrew scene, it's only been out for maybe last 3 years. And only until this year did they release sour viciae for homebrew. And there's other yeast manufacturers that make some other pro brewer products. Berkeley Yeast Labs makes one that are yeasts that either were wild and develop lactic acid, and they still develop a decent tasting beer, because there's stuff that develops lactic acid that will make a crappy tasting beer, but that's not what you want. And there's wild stuff, and then there's bioengineered stuff, which is what we're going to get into. So both of them. So if you want to start passing around the cans of Helia Sea Witch, we'll talk about. So what are the benefits of these new methods? As I clearly state here, is CIP. Nothing changes in your brew house. I don't have to go buy another fermenter. I don't need pin lock cornies. I don't need to distinguish anything, right? If I'm not making bug sours, I can just have my same CIP process, treat it like a traditional yeast, and I can get those cool, refreshing kettle sours with fruits or no fruits or whatever you want to do. It just makes it really easy to just treat in your brew house. And let's say you don't care for sours, but your wife does. Happy wife, right? You make her one and boom, one package and you're done. So on a pro brewer side, it's also nice because we don't have to have a tank time of 3 days on the brew house. We're not holding up the brew house hostage. So let's look at the first one. Happens to be a Lallemand product, and it's known as the Philly Sour. I think, did Mike win it? Somebody won it over there. So it's an interesting product. You just treat it like a regular yeast. It will let you go down to 3.2, 3.5 pH. One of the things that makes it have more, well, first of all, sometimes some people co-pitch. Now, what is co-pitching? When I'm going to add another yeast, I'm going to mix two yeasts. I'm going to take Philly Sour, and I'm going to throw some English ale yeast, co-pitch it with it. So now they're going to compete against each other, right? I don't usually recommend co-pitching for this one in my tests because it doesn't go as sour as Sourvassier. You'll see in the next slide. But a 3.2 is pretty sour. But you can go below that, and then when you fruit it, you balance it out, kind of like back sweetening. What I would say is, if you want to get more on the lower spectrum, on the 3.2, if you can get more glucose, they've seen that creates more acid production. So if you mash higher, and you're not adding some sort of sugar or brewer's crystal or something that has glucose in it, then, you might only go 3.4, 3.5. But if you mash lower at 147 and you generate more glucose, you can add like dextrose or like I said, brewer's crystals, then you're more acidic. So it's up to you. The nice thing is the Philly Sour does like it a little bit warmer than your regular ale yeast. So that's also can be a benefit in the warmer climate. If it's summer and you don't have controlled fermentation, boom, Philly Sour. It is not a sac yeast. It's a Lacani. I'm mispronouncing it already, but it's a different species, not sac cerevisiae. So it has its own unique flavors. And I think it does have like a little bit more tropical notes, peach or something like that. So if you have something really acidic, really sharp, I would recommend Sourvassier than this one. But yeah, taste it. Obviously, it's going to be hard in the stuff you're tasting because it's already been fruited. They did I'll get to you in a second. They fruited it with blueberry, guava, and pineapple. And I don't think you get the blueberry. The guava is very present in it. And they put a lot of it in because I was there. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was my question. Of was it fruited and with what? Or
Yeah.
if that was just all the yeast expression.
Yeah, so you
answered
did.
it. Thank you.
But it would have been interesting if you could taste this base, because this base tends to have other layers of complexity. And like I said, it'll have like a peachy stone fruit kind of finish. So if you like something cleaner, maybe you want to do more of a kettle sour or sourvassier, which is a very, very clean thing. The other nice thing, my buddy at Helia, I know he lets it go high. Yeah, they say 68 to 77, but I've done it hot. Like I did it without controlled fermentation and let it roll, and it's fine. It doesn't create any off flavors or anything like that. It doesn't really behave like a sack. It's a different animal, but it likes it a little bit hotter. And it's not as fast as the sourvassier. You can get it in 5 days done. This one, it depends. So 10 days, sometimes to get really terminal towards the end. But if you're not going to get, so if you want to go only 3.3, and you could probably do it in 5 days, especially if you're going high temp. So those are going to be your parameters. Another thing is it can go up to 9%. So if you want to do a higher, ABV sour, and then you're going to fruit it, because people don't understand, right? If I fruit it a lot, then maybe I'm only going to get a 7% beer or something else. Places like Alvarado, they have those 9% sours. Well, they make like a 13% sour, and then they add so many pounds of fruit that it goes down to 9. So that's crazy. So if you want to do that.
Raul,
Yes.
I had a question for you. How does this yeast interact with like darker grains and malts?
In my personal experience, I've used it like on some stuff more like on the amber side, not like I haven't done a sour stout with it, which we do dark sours like a oat Bruin or something like that, but it should be just fine. It's not afraid of roastiness. And then we're talking about the Philly sour. This one doesn't care. This one might as well be an English ale yeast, because they just took they took a yeast that ferments well, is very neutral, flocks super well, and they just did a homologous recombination type of to a gene, to a single gene they found that would create lactic acid in the right kind of ratio. And so it's basically like just pressing a button on the, 002, and then it's just creating this perfect kettle sour for you. So this one is different. But this one, because of that, they wanted to get something that would go more sour. So you could get like 3.0. So you got to be careful here, or you just got to be ready to fruit. You can also co-pitch this one, which I do a lot of co-pitching. The problem with co-pitching is that you can't really reuse the yeast, but they don't recommend you reusing the yeast because it gets so acidic that it's hard to really, that yeast's kind of, they say tainted, but also they're trying to sell more yeast. I mean, let's be real. There are ways to like save it, and you just got to prop it up a little bit, bring it back to health, because it is very acidic. But you can use it. But once you co-pitch, you don't really want to reuse it because you don't know what ratios you're going to get on the second gen and stuff. So if you are going to reuse it, it's good to just keep it straight, do it, reuse it, and then just think, well, I'm going to use a lot of fruit. I'm going to do it this way. Just think ahead of time what your plan is. I like to do the co-pitching because I get some flavors and I already have a ratio that I've messed with, and you guys can start serving the base. So on this one, the interesting thing is that I brought you the base and I brought you a special fruited one. So you're going to taste the bare base, but I have co-pitched it with just another yeast in a ratio of like 80-20. So 80% Sourvassier, only 20% of another standard, kind of like English ale yeast or something. Actually, I think it was a wheat yeast. And the grain bill on this is going to be like 50-50. I do like traditional. So you're going to get that wheat, but you're also going to get some of the flavor of the other yeast. And I've done this also with some Belgian yeast as a co-pitch. Comes out pretty nice. So it just depends what you're trying to build. And if you have an idea with what you want to fruit it with, then it can work out really well. But if I was running a whole series of sours and fruiting them, I probably wouldn't co-pitch and I would just do it straight and then just blend. So that's why. Other things on the sour Vicier is that it has higher alcohol tolerance. So it'll go up to 12%. So that is a benefit. And if you look at the range, 50 to 72, I mean, that's like the range for 002. It's very, in my opinion, like 002, because I taste it every day. So I know as the pH is dropping what it's tasting like. I'm like, oh, I've had this one before. And it's just super clean. So if you want something really clean, I highly recommend this one. It just came to the market for home brewers as of a month ago. So before that, you would have to get it from your brewer's friends. I've been using this one for like about a year. And it's actually kind of pricey for a pro brewer. Like I'm with Mike on $10 for 10 barrels is a good deal. But this one does have its benefits is that I don't make as many sours. And when I do, I want to make a big batch. And I don't want to deal with making a kettle sour or good belly, all that. You know, it is a pain. And so I'm a one-man band, so this works for me. So it's pretty cool. The other one you guys are going to have is basically the same base, but just with some fruit. And what we did is we pitched some strawberry puree and let it sit in there for like 3 days. And then I made a super small batch, so just for here. So it's normally we use this base in our watermelon goza. So this base will get salt and we'll get, I leave the coriander out, but we put salt and watermelon and that goes in the brewery like that. So it's a goza de sandia. So if it's coming out too fast, pull a little gassy gas off. But go full throttle. Question. These yeasts, both Philly Sour and the Sour Vassier, are dry yeasts. Rehydrate traditional Lallemand style. They'll have it on the back of the package. Just so you know, I don't rehydrate, Jack, but you know, that's just me. Like it depends. If you've ever tried to rehydrate a brick of yeast, it's a pain in the butt. Like, as a home brewer, I would rehydrate if I wanted to, but as a pro brewer, you got to have like a big thing. Then it starts getting a big foamy head, and you're all worried about getting stuff in there. And some of us have like these little stainless steel like on drill things to mix them, and like, you know what? I pitched it from the top port just fine, or if you can mix it in a keg, like if I rehydrate, I would just rehydrate in a keg and mix it in and then pitch it back in. But I just throw it in the top port, and I crank the gas on, and the top port's always above the carb stone, so I'm just pouring it slowly, and I'm running oxygen in there, and then I just sell there. Is what? The pitch rate, that 10 grams is supposed to be for 5 gallons, according to them. That's why they sell like it. But when you read their research and the pro stuff, they actually recommend like 2 grams or 1.5 to 2 grams per gallon. So it doesn't add up. No. Wait, it doesn't. No, that adds up. That adds up. But no, I'm telling you, the research on the Sour Vassier, it should have been more like 20 grams for 5 gallons. But I don't know why, but they came out with a 10. So it works. It's just one of the things about it, it's not like these things, like the Philly Sour is a slow starter. Once it starts, it's crazy. But you don't get so worried. Like it might take a day. Like it might be like a White Labs pitch, like one day, you know. But don't be worried. It'll start going, and once it goes, it kills everything because the acidity is going to start killing anything in there. So it's good. Sometimes one of the things you want to do in kettle sours, put a little extra acidulated. Already give it like a 4.5 canvas if you can, 4.8, 4.5. So you can go a little acidic to kind of help it, and that way let it go. And once it takes off, it takes off. You had a question, Chris?
Yeah, a comment and a question. So comment on pitching without rehydrating. On the pro scale, you can dump it in either the door or the top and fill from your dump port.
Yep.
And that kind of rehydrates as you're filling it and mixes it up. And people who use conical as homebrewers can do that too. If you pump in through your dump port, it's kind of mixing it and hydrating. And then I was curious what the puree for the strawberry was. It tastes really good and is not phenolic at all.
The puree is actually, we on that one, we actually, I think it might be a puree and a concentrate from Western Foods. You know who I'm talking about. The guys up in Madeira that a lot of the brewers use. In fact, they probably use them here too. So it's good. They reconstitute the purees and stuff. They have really good balance, and the bricks are there, and it's not a phenolic strawberry. Strawberry is one of those that's kind of a pain in the butt because it could get phenolic, it can ferment out, you get nothing, unbalanced, all that. So, I probably left it on the sweet side for you guys. Normally, I would probably have it more on the sour side, but sweet sells. So, just saying.
Yeah, what was the ABV on that? The strawberry?
Oh, the ABV on the strawberry one. Well, I don't know. I haven't calculated the strawberry, but the base is 5.3. Now, as a home brewer, when you're using this, it's hard to calculate the exact ABV using a densimeter or even a hydrometer because what happens is Cerevisiae, some of the density changes because it's creating lactic acid, and some of the sugars are being used to create lactic acid. So you will be, they say like a 0.1, 0.2 points less than you think. Even you might be saying I'm 5.3, so I always go safe. Like if it was like 5.5, I'll be like it's probably more like 5.3, or I'll have to get it to the lab or use some sort of alcohol test to get exact. But just so you know. But other than that, I think it's a really easy way for people to venture into the sour market. I mean, you already have totes full of lambic that you can work on. So why do that at home? Really, I mean, you can't beat that Pesh lambic. If you put a Belgian label on it that said imported from Belgium, people would pay $25 for that bottle. So it's like, why try to recreate that? Don't give Andy ideas. Is that what you're saying?
What was the pH on these two?
The base. Well, I can't. The
base.
Once it has the strawberry, I didn't. Actually, my pH meter uses a weird battery, and it ran out. So the pH on the base, when I last took it, I think it was only like 3.3. But just so you know, I pulled it from the fermenter. It's still in the fermenter. It's still going to sit in the fermenter for another 3 days probably because it's been cold, so it hasn't gotten super terminal. It's at that base, and this whole thing I pulled was the specific gravity was only like 1.011. It's going to go probably another 3 points, but it's just too cold out. So, question. That's one of my goals. I will have that answer for you. I've only done like a 7. But I've been wanting, I just haven't had time. I've been wanting to do like an Alvarado, like that blueberry thing where it's like super crazy amounts of fruit. But to make that commercially, you either got to commit and you got to have a crowd or not, because like the fruit is going to be so expensive. So, when you imagine how much fruit you need to drop 4 full points of alcohol, like it's just, I was at Alvarado once by chance because my son goes to school up there, and I said I'm going to swing by, and they took me into the back and they told me what they do, and I was like, what? I was like, you make a 13%er, and then you put totes of fruit in, and it goes down to 9%. And they're like, yeah, they do this in the wine industry all the time. We're doing, and I was like blown away. And I was like, but that's why you're paying $9 for a glass, because, you know, and they're making it at scale, so you can imagine, you know, it's top quality stuff. But yeah, I will. I'll get back to you, and I'll do a little pour. Will be a pour presentation. Yeah, definitely.
Raul, a quick question here, Raul. I think you may have answered the question answered already, but I was asking you how you kept this base a little sweeter. Was it because it just hadn't finished fermenting yet? It was too
no, yeah, it's because it was cold out and it hasn't finished. It's just going really slow, like it's doing like 1 point per day. So it got to that point. I'm like, well, I got to present. So I just did it 2 days ago. I'm like, I'm pulling it, fast carb, shake and bake, boom. And we shook and book it, and there it is. And then fruited it this morning, yesterday. So, just a quick one.
Where is your brewery, and can we set up a group visit?
My brewery, which is super tiny because we only got like 3 10-barrel fermenters and like a 3-barrel brew house, is in Carlsbad. And yeah, you guys, we do wort buys, we'll do all kinds of stuff. But you know, in that 3-barrel fermenter, brew house, I make 5-barrel batches of lager. So we do all kinds of things to push it to the limit. And we used to have a 10-barrel mash tun and stuff like that, but we took it away and we're just sticking with it all electric 3-barrel right now. But yeah, we can set some up. It's on Faraday and El Camino.
Could be challenging.
Yeah. It's behind the homebrew shop.
Do you have both of these yeasts at the shop?
We do have both yeasts at the shop. And we carry Omega, White Labs, Lallemand, Fermentus. But these are there. And yeah, feel free to come over and grab one and, send over a recipe or something. And I think I was going to say the Philly Sour, I forgot to tell you guys, but that one, the grain bill on the Philly Sour, I know is like, doesn't have that much wheat. I think it's only got like 30% wheat in it. It's not wheat heavy, but it also had so much fruit in it that you might have not felt it. But I feel that, if you put the wheat, you're going to get a different finish and it's a little more traditional. So depending on what you're trying to do. Yeah. I think we got one more for Lewis.
So just getting another perspective, I know how Andy fruits his sours. How do you fruit your sours? What's your mindset going into it?
Well, I mean, I think it all depends on what kind of sour I'm doing. So yeah, for a kettle sour, I think what you got to find is you got to find quality fruit. That's what everybody's going to tell you, right? But that doesn't mean it's got to be fresh. I mean, if you're in a brewery in Oregon, you're in heaven because you can just go like a couple hours away and get like some of the best fruit ever. But we're not there, So you got to do what you got to do. So if you can get high quality stuff that's frozen, like peaches, stone fruit stays really well frozen. So you can do that. But it also depends on how much time you got to fruit it. I've used purees, Oregon purees that are not cheap. Those things are picked at the highest, when they're perfectly ripe. They pick them, they flash pasteurize them, put them. I use those all the time, which is, I think, the blackberry Oregon puree is what they used in the Purple Church, by the way. That's what he does. It's Oregon puree. But I like sometimes to do a mix. If you can use some fresh stuff and then some of these, like I said, there's frozen concentrate products that we can buy. You just can't do it as a home brewer because the frozen concentrates from the stores are going to be full of crap. You don't want those. The ones we get, they're very high quality. They're used in pastries or high-end beverages, that kind of stuff. So you want to use, even if it's a concentrate, you got to get the high quality stuff. There's stuff that they make for bartenders, stuff like that. There's purees. They make, we carry a line of French ones and other ones. Look for those things. If they're high end, a little goes a long way, and it's just going to make your product that much better. And so, you know, if you can get the fresh stuff, boom. We do one with persimmons, and it's all fresh persimmons because there's tons of persimmon ranches around here, and they don't know what to do with stuff. So, you know, look. There's like on Facebook and stuff, there's groups of like gardeners or people that grow fruit trees and stuff like that. And they're always like, they got extra stuff and they're like giving it away if you go pick it. So, you know, just look at there like, hey, you still got those peaches, you still got that. And then just take your friends and go get it.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great tip too. The other one I have is specialty produce near the airport. I know we're based in North County, but if you go down to specialty produce, they have some really high quality purees you can buy.
Oh, really?
Because it's for the restaurant industry. I mean, they're really a restaurant supplier. You might see their vans driving around town. Yeah, they're dropping off all kinds of produce for a lot of the local restaurants. But they also, you can go into their like minus 10 degree cold box and get some really nice purees.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and you know, fruit, the nice thing about doing sours and putting fruit is that the fruit doesn't have to look good. It just has to taste good. So, you know, you don't have to pay top dollar. You can, we've gone to Fruit Purdue and be like, hey, you know, you got some stuff that if you ever got stuff that you can't sell because it got a little bruise, boom. We had, this guy had 2 pallets of green turtle plums. And I was calling everybody. I'm like, there's 2 pallets of green turtle plums, and they're just bruised from, they got pecked by a couple birds on top, and they couldn't sell the 2 pallets. So I was calling a couple of mead maker friends. They all came over and got like 20 boxes. And, you know, just look around. You never know.
I was going to say, we have the good fortune of being next door to a place called Daily Harvest. And so it's like a farmer's box company, and so sometimes they get product that can't go in a box because it's not pretty enough. And so sometimes they walk over next door and say, hey, do you want some of this stuff? And so we have that good fortune of, you know, just happen to be next door to that. But, you know, so if you, any of those fruit box companies or, you know, farmers boxes, there's all kinds of things. You can't predict what you're going to get. So you kind of have to make something up on the fly, but that's
so easy to make it on the fly now. You just like, it's not even an overnight process. So otherwise, add salt and coriander and call it a goza. You're done. Still a good thing. Like, yeah. I mean, really, no, but I mean, those are all great things. So like, or put a little citrus in there, like make your own little like kind of Radler sour. I don't know. So just get creative. Anybody else? Going once, twice. I think we got it. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for your time.